everyone. I'd like to call the Board of Water and Wastewater Commissioners meeting to order at the Harwich Water Department at 196 Chatham Road, Harwich, Mass. for Wednesday, October 26th, 2022 at 11:30. All members are present, and we have Commissioner Underwood on the phone. Judith, are you with us?
I am. Can you hear me okay?
Great, okay, thank you. We have no executive session, no public comments or announcements. I need a motion for the consent agenda for minutes for July 27th, August 25th, September 14th, and September 28th of 2022.
Mr. Chairman, I move we adopt the minutes as presented.
We have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? I'll take a vote through roll call. Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Noreen?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Judith?
Aye.
And it's an aye myself, thank you. All right, let's move on to abatements. We have an abatement for 10 Brooks. So, we have an abatement request for $1,000. The total amount assessed is $1,315.04. It looks like there was a irrigation leak. This is a summer home, and they were not there during an irrigation leak. Went down to a big puddle. I know there is a water ban, but at this time I didn't think there was a ban, and each zone was minimally watered. Leak has since I'm assuming, been shut off. Is there any discussion on this abatement or a motion? I'll make a motion to deny. Is there a second?
Second that.
We have a second. Any further discussion? I'll take a vote through roll call. Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Ms. Donahue?
Aye.
Mr. Goff?
Aye.
Ms. Underwood?
Aye.
Yes, I for myself. Thank you. All right. Dan, are you taking this one, internal adjustments, or is Wellesley here for...
So internal adjustments, this is our first quarter's internal adjustments. We do these typically once quarterly that cover any water bills or other charges that are abated. You can see on the bottom we have the administrative late fee forgiveness, service type protection plan, people unenrolling from that service, so these are all credits for those.
Unenrolling from water type?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right, so, Noreen.
I know I've asked this question before, so I hope this will be the last time. On the top ones, could you just tell me again, I know they're water, but what types of things, like on the ones that add up to 5,900?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Well, these would be, one of the things that added up was we charged a notice fee for sending out certified mail for the first round of water fines.
Mm-hmm.
And we removed all of those $10 fees, so that did add up. And there's meter read adjustments where we run the estimate, we estimate, then we get a final read, and Wellesley has to make an adjustment, which puts it on this adjustment.
That's fine, I just wanted to get a flavor and finally write it down, so thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the internal adjustment as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Goff. I'll take a roll call vote. Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Ms. Donahue?
Aye.
Mr. Goff?
Aye.
Ms. Underwood?
Aye.
And it's not myself. Thank you. And then we have FY23 first quarter water department usage in the amount of $2,313.52. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the internal adjustment.
Second?
Second.
Judith, thank you.
Okay.
Discussion?
I just want to write down and ask again what types of things, just in general, these are.
It's all of our internal usage throughout the water department accounts where we have meters.
Okay.
sample tap at a treatment building, things of
I
that
see.
nature.
Yeah, okay, thanks very much.
In-house.
In-house, but I see, that's what threw me, because this was internal and this one is whatever, but that's all right.
Internal and department usage, yep. All right, so we have a motion, we have a second through Judith. I'll take a roll call vote. Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Ms. Dunhue?
Aye.
Mr. Goff?
Aye.
Ms. Underwood?
Aye.
And it's aye for myself. Thank you. Okay, water restrictions and enforcement. Dan?
All right, included in the packet is a breakdown Sandy prepared of citations issued, citations paid, and kind of a status update as to where we're at presently. So we have issued $51,600 in citations, and we have collected 55% or $28,750 of those citations. Moving forward on that, we do have a meeting this afternoon with the clerk magistrate at the Orleans District Court as kind of a introductory meeting, as we have had 4 citations request hearings. So this is an initial kickoff and introduction as to how those hearings are going to go. And just building off and continuing the discussion of water restrictions and enforcement, I would also like to ask the board just as to where we're at today, October 25th, or 26th rather, if there's a willingness to lift the restrictions that are in place, or if the desire is to keep them. Obviously, we've had an abundance of precipitation today, as well as some over the last couple weeks. We have seen the aquifer level start to stabilize at the bottom, what I would call the floor of where we're at, or I anticipate would be at this year. We did have a slight blip in increase since the rain we've had in the last couple weeks, where lawn irrigation, things of that nature is really out of season. This would just kind of lift our obligation to enforce, fine, and continue as we have.
Noreen?
I'd like to encourage that process, but also I would add that, since the situation may very well be a continuing situation over the next however many years, I'd like to give the staff a chance to get all notices, all restrictions off our bills, off our websites, off of everything, so that come spring, we can start off fresh with some kind of a water program without having, to try to remember, oh wait, we still have those 2-day things hanging, so that's what I did.
Right. Well, we are gonna clear up on those existing, right? And you're gonna meet today with the clerk magistrate to see how we're gonna get.
Well, this is, the meeting today is really to brief on how the hearings are going to go.
Okay.
I do have an email out to legal counsel with respect to changing the regulations, changing the bylaw. I have not had correspondence back from them yet as to what we are or are not able to do. So that will have to continue when we get legal input. But
Okay.
I did notice, like I said, I can't remember the other town that had legal notice in the paper to change their rules and regulations as far as water goes. And then the one today down, So I'll have to go back and see what I can do. But I think it may have been Chatham along in.
I know Orleans recently did, when they got their new Water Management Act permit, I think within the last year. And then obviously I saw Yarmouth in the Times this morning, they're adopting at town meeting this year, revised water ban enforcement, although they are going down the road that we're trying to get away from through the non-criminal disposition. So they are following that path, but
That's it.
Anything else? All right, so first I'd like to get a motion to lift the water restrictions.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Can I ask a quick question?
Go ahead, Julie.
For us to reimpose the restriction, like let's say next spring sometime, does there have to be the state piece in place, or can we as a commission move forward on that ourselves?
Presently, you, as I understand it, you as a water commission can adopt regulations for, if there's a thought that there's a water supply emergency, concerns with our ability to produce the water, you guys do have the discretion to impose restrictions, as I understand it. And it's, typically, there's seasonal water restrictions. A lot of municipalities have calendar restrictions that end September 30th. Either way, every year when we implement restrictions or lift them as what's being contemplated today, I have to complete a form and submit that to DEP advising them of the change in restriction. So whether or not it's voluntary by this board in response to drought declaration, those processes all happen or take place.
Okay, I'm just thinking ahead if we wanted to be proactive next spring and not wait for DEP to make a broader statement, that's all. So thanks.
Actually, I believe that we were ahead of the state when we put the restrictions in place, because we had already seen we were headed for trouble with 2 wells down. So we were ahead of the state by quite a bit of time. So,
great, thank you.
yeah.
Okay.
Noreen?
Should we have a date on this? I know I made the motion, but effective date or no?
I would say effective immediately.
Today.
So the motion is to lift the water restrictions effective immediately. We have a second. We have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? I'll take a roll call vote. Mr. Townsend?
Aye.
Ms. Donahue?
I,
Mr. Goff?
Aye.
Ms. Underwood?
I,
And it's myself. You have to Sandy?
Yes. I just wanted to say that half of the citations have not been paid. So after our meeting with the clerk magistrate today, we anticipate that we're going to send a second notice to all of these customers who haven't paid. So even though the water restrictions have been lifted by your vote, whoever has been issued a citation is still expected to pay.
That was going to be my next motion. My next request was going to finish up the existing fines, and at that point, we'll hold off on enforcement effective today as well. So that's my motion to clean up the existing citations and to halt enforcement for the time being. Is there a second?
When you say,
Gary, can I?
Hold on a second.
Did you?
I'm
I
sorry.
couldn't hear the second part of your motion.
Okay, hold on a second. Alan, you got a question?
yes, when you say halt, that's any new citation?
Any new citations? We're gonna clear up what we have on the books right here, the 22,850.
Yeah.
We'll get those settled, because it's just becoming too much to try and enforce this whole
Gotcha. Okay.
water restrictions. Until you meet today with the clerk magistrate, we'll get an idea how this is gonna go and how we can bill in the future. No new citations will be issued, and no new enforcement will be issued effective today with the lifting of the water ban.
Lifting of the ban.
Right.
Okay.
But to clear up to $22,850 is what we're still owed in citations.
Yeah.
So we'll follow through with those, wherever that leads us. We're gonna follow through with the citations unpaid.
Yep.
Judith, did you hear that?
I did, thank you.
Okay, so that's the motion. Is there a second?
Second?
We have a second, and I'll take a roll call vote. Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Ms. Donahue?
I,
Mr. Goff?
Aye.
Ms. Underwood?
Aye.
And tonight for myself. Okay, thank you. Okay, town charter and bylaw discussion.
So this was somewhat tied to the water restriction enforcement discussion, just where any change to our restrictions is likely to require a change in the bylaw. I would just ask that until we get response from legal counsel, that we postpone this topic, because it's really contingent upon their direction.
All right. Water and wastewater enterprise fund. Looks like your favorite topic right there.
That's right, that's right.
Shall I start?
Go right ahead.
Please.
All right. So just with the run-up to Fall Town Meeting and the discussions around funding sources and uses for the acquisition of Phase 3 easements and Route 28 easements, this board, has had a number of discussions about applicability, if you will, or appropriateness of Sewer Enterprise Fund being used for ultimately CWMP implementation activities. So just as a thought for clarification amongst the really two boards that interact with these funds, being the Board of Water Wastewater Commissioners and the Board of Selectmen through CWMP efforts, to just establish an understanding or a policy for the funding sources and anticipated uses. So I put together just a very quick spreadsheet that was included in the packet, to start that discussion. Right now, at least as I kind of understand it, as discussions that have taken place over the past 7-8 years, selectmen being responsible for the CWMP would be using general fund or free cash for that purpose. We recently adopted or created the Wastewater Special Purpose Stabilization Fund that's going to get a percentage of the rooms tax. That is also something that has been discussed to help offset wastewater debt, CWMP implementation costs. And then already also in existence is the Sewer Enterprise Fund. The one thing that's not yet been created that is included in this table is the Water Infrastructure Investment Fund. It's also referred to as a WIF. The town administrator made reference to the WIF at the capital outlay meeting last week. I know it is something that at least the town of Yarmouth has adopted in effort to help reduce the tax impacts from wastewater funding. That said, I look at CWMP implementation debt relative to the construction as general fund, free cash, and/or wastewater special purpose stabilization fund expenses. And then when we look at the Sewer Enterprise Fund, in my mind, I envision that being used for operational expenses for the collection system. For example, if we needed to re-side one of the pump stations, that wouldn't be a general fund expense, but instead one incurred and paid for from Sewer Enterprise Fund. So those are kind of the general thoughts that I put out there for discussion, and I think my hope is that just to keep things clean and mutual understanding amongst both boards, that once there's kind of consensus on this, that we could then invite our selectmen liaison in to engage the Board of Selectmen in a discussion so that we're all on the same page moving forward.
Maureen?
Hi. So, Dan and I talked, it's my phone, go away. Dan and I talked about this, and this was his idea to present this way, and I think it makes the whole discussion so much clearer. If I could add a few edits to this page to talk about it. So the way I look at it is the first column, the general fund, those monies are controlled by the Board of Selectmen. What I might add to this, Dan, and I know it's included in CWMP, the first line, CWMP-related expenses, but maybe we want to add the words construction or new construction, just to make it crystal clear, because we know it's in there, but other people might. The other question I had on the first column is, do we really want that? Did we intend that fund to pay for the IMA capacity purchasing?
For that, I meant for the, was it 6 million or
Right.
so?
Oh, you're right.
That we paid
You're
Chatham
right.
for purchase capacity?
Yep.
Or my thought in that is if we do negotiate with the town of Dennis for use of their treatment facility, any cost
Okay.
for that capacity would be borne out of the selectmen
Yeah.
general fund.
Okay. So at any rate, that's column 1, and this is just what, we're proposing to the board. The second column, the wastewater special purpose stabilization fund, I wondered, Dan, if we should add the line, we have wastewater debt, but should we just add CWMP, because it also could be new construction, and also for clarity, that fund, in my mind, is controlled by the Board of Selectmen, not by us. That's for new construction, things like that. Just a couple of facts that don't have to be on this page, but I learned in research. I've heard it said that this fund doesn't start until July 1st, 23. I went back to the original article, and it says, until January 1st, 23. I went back to the article, and it does say July 1st, 22, so, whatever they work out, but, and also, what it says in it is that establishing in this fund, there is no further appropriation required. What those words mean to me means that the Board of Selectmen could spend this without going back to town meeting or something like this. And as to an amount that would wind up there, in there every year, I'm not sure. I looked back at some local receipts. I think possibly the town accountant may have already separated half of them, so, it might be 200,000 a year that goes into it, it might be 400,000 a year that goes into it, I'm not sure. Dan's concept is that eventually, between a couple of these funds, they might be able to cover the debt payment in a few years every year, until the next phase, of course, but at least for this phase, and thereby give the taxpayer a little relief for a few years, so that would be nice. So that's column 2, also Board of Selectmen. Third column, the width, and one thing I'll just point out, the state insists this be called the Water Infrastructure Fund, but it's for wastewater, so good luck to us all keeping that one straight. But I would also suggest in this column, Dan, that we again add CWMP to that, just to make it clear. And whatever goes in there, in my mind, that would also be controlled by the Board of Selectmen. So that comes to the last column, the Sewer Enterprise Fund, which I feel is solely controlled by us. The only things I would suggest for clarity adding to this, Dan, would be the first line where it says capital expenses. Could we put some words in to say like capital expenses for completed or connected phases? Any words that will distinguish it from capital expenses for new construction. And that would be it. So again, this was Dan's concept, and by doing it this way, I think it saves a lot of the gray back and forth talking, that I was doing, because if, assuming that the Board of Selectmen would agree that this was legally correct and was the intent of all those articles, then we'd have a clear path going forward.
Yeah, we'll have, Michael come in, have a conversation.
Could I ask, I was wondering if we should also invite the town administrator at that time, because he's the one that directs a lot of people, how to spend these monies, so it just seems rather than having it relayed back and forth.
Yeah. No, we definitely should keep the town administrator.
Yeah. But do you folks think this is a clearer way to?
Well, I think it's better to have it written down and, start discussing it, like exactly where the funds should come from, so we're not kind of surprised.
Right.
When they say, oh, should we come out of this or come out of that, at least we have an idea of
Right.
where.
Yeah, I do too.
I think the more things that are written down, the better, because then we have, at least it's written down, it's understandable.
The big thing is to make it clear, so there's no second guessing in this.
I think this chart idea was great, made it so much easier. You've been,
I'm hoping too, and I know just as an aside, when we were negotiating as part of DHY, Yarmouth had already established the WIF. I believe they already had the Wastewater Special Purpose Stabilization Fund. I don't know to what percentages they were funding that at, but my understanding was that they were able to offset pretty much all of their wastewater construction debt through the funding of those two accounts, if you will, so that really mitigated the effects on the tax rate.
I wonder if you invite the chair, Michael, and the TA to a meeting, you know, what we should tell them in advance. I mean in terms of so that they, you know, are informed, but...
Probably we could forward this to them,
Yeah,
give them an idea.
yeah.
And basically, that's
Yeah.
would be the general concept of the discussion.
Just say we want to clarify some of the funding sources and get them a full. Well, I appreciate working with Dan because, you know, they said so much gray in it, it was bothering me, and as you could tell. Thank
All
you.
right, anything else on this? We'll move forward with, send an email out to Michael and town administrator, see if they can come in and just have a quick conversation about that.
Right, and then if they ever want in the future the two boards to meet, that's up to them.
Yeah.
Thank you, folks, thank you, fellow board.
All right, new business. Approved waterworks supply and procurement under 50,000, Cape Cod wind water.
So I'm gonna actually ask the board if they can either approve contingent upon receipt of documentation from Cape Cod Windwater. So just a little backstory on this procurement. Typically we do an annual unit price bid for waterworks supplies. Given the supply chain climate, price climate that we're in today, it's just not advisable because we'd be paying an incredibly inflated price for people to hold their unit pricing for a year, just with the uncertainty. Because of that, we have went out to bid for a lump sum purchase of materials, so this is a one-time purchase. Cape Cod Windwater was the low bidder. We're still waiting on some of the contract documentation to come in from them, along with the insurance certificates and things of that nature. So I would like to ask the board to approve this contract today. I would like to ask the board to approve it contingent upon receipt of executed Town of Harwich agreement and required insurance certificates.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Yeah. So in other words, before all the uncertainties in procurement happened, normally we'd be approving the actual list, in essence, item by item, but in this, we're approving, like, say, 50,000 and whatever we accumulate to get towards that.
This is the 44,000
50, yeah.
bid that they submitted on is in that amount. So it's
Right.
40,000,
Right. Yeah, whatever.
102.52. So this is the material list that we are looking to purchase. On the other one, it would have been a unit price with estimated quantities
Right.
that we would have done, and we would have, like, yes, up to.
Okay. So I don't think that changes any of the things to do with procurement law.
No.
Okay.
No, it's more our strategy, right?
I see.
We don't want to commit to a high unit price due to the uncertainty of the bidding climate.
Okay.
So I know, and Sandy's talked with the supplier, a couple other municipalities are doing it, you know, quarterly bids, or they'll do twice a year, just a more increased frequency given
Right.
supply chain and everything
So
that's going
if
on.
you wound up buying nothing but curb stops, you would buy $40,100 worth of curb stops, and we'd be perfectly fine.
For this, no. This is, we're looking for 12 curb stops, the quantity, unit price. So are looking to make a purchase in the amount of $40,000 for all of these items.
Okay.
So these are all items that we need to stock, supply for repair
Here.
for here.
Okay.
Yeah.
What used to be, we used to get a bid, individual price
Right.
bid, and then they could just go buy them through the year for that amount. But
So here's a good example, right? So when a water main break happens, we use typically 2 high-max couplings. Due to supply chain, I don't know how quickly I'm going to be able to get those. So we're trying to build a stock list of everything that we might need to make repairs so that, typically we would keep a couple on the shelf, we use them, we buy new ones, they show up. Now we're looking to buy in stock today for the duration.
Okay. Thank you.
The stock's gone up so much.
Yeah.
Doubled.
So is there a motion to approve the Cape Cod wind water?
so moved, Mr. Chairman.
And is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? I'll take a roll call vote. Mr. Thompson?
All right?
Ms. Donahue?
Aye.
Mr. Goff?
Aye.
And Ms. Underwood?
Aye.
And it's not myself, thank you.
So once all the documentation does come in, I can have Tracy reach out to gather signatures on this one.
All right, 20 Winding Way, Service Type Protection Plan, eligibility for coverage waiver.
Tough one.
So do they have an issue? Do they have a leak?
They're asking for an exception to the rule. A service type protection plan does not get transferred. It's not transferable
Okay.
to another owner, whether it's family or otherwise. So I think because this is a family transfer, they're asking for an exception. Meanwhile, they're waiting already for the 90-day period, because there's a 90-day waiting period
Right.
before you are an official member.
But they don't have a leak or any damage or anything at this point?
Not
They're
that
just-
I'm aware of.
They're just looking for continuous.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's hard. It seems like they're trying to do the right thing. I mean, we say coverage isn't transferable, but then to read this, it's like they're really proactive about their property. So it's really a difficult one. I mean, we're getting their money anyway, so all we're really saying is, do we not cover them for 30 days, if 90 days, if something should happen now?
So when we do the coverage, that comes out of our budget. Like, we don't have an insurance company who covers the cost of it.
That's correct. That's
Comes out of our
correct. We
budget.
have a line item in our revenue that is for service type protection plans, so all that revenue is collected. And as anyone has claims, sort of, it's taken out of a different budget on the expense side for service type.
I'd love to hear what Mr. Thompson's thinking.
He's thinking, too.
I'd love to hear Mr. Thompson's insight on this one.
Can I ask a quick question?
Go ahead, Judith, yes.
Alan's thinking, this just didn't dawn on me when there's a property transfer that the new owners are at risk, right, for 3 months.
Yes.
Is there a reason why
Yeah,
we
that's what I was just gonna ask.
do that? But it just seems,
So we typically have, so there's, the waiting period is there, partially to prevent, say you walk down in your basement and you see your water service leaking, it's to prevent you from saying, oh, I got a leak, I'm gonna call and
Right.
pay the $17, and then I'm gonna call the water department and say I have a leak and get my new water service installed for free and then discontinue the service. So this is an effort to try to keep people honest with the 90 days.
well, I totally get that, Dan, but if you're a new buyer of a property, it's kind of like a septic, right? Your septic gets inspected and, I mean, it's just, if somebody, I don't know, I mean, I suppose that would require an inspection on our part, it just seems,
Well, the homeowner, there's only so much you can do, right, for the portion that's underground. That said, the homeowner's inspection, if they're gonna be thorough, should look at the water service coming in the foundation wall. But I guess what I would just say is, we don't want to assume liability either, so I think when a property transfers hands, it's an elective service that people are paying for, essentially, so we can't automatically transfer it to the new owner, because the new owner may not want it.
I agree with that.
And then,
Does the 30 days, does the 90 days have anything to do with our quarterly billing?
I mean,
No, not that I'm aware of. I believe it was more or less that, for what Dan just said, is that you can't just, I have a leak,
I agree with that,
sign
yeah,
up,
because that makes sense.
and-
But hold
yeah.
30
So
days
it's
or
kind of
6
like,
or something like
well,
that. Why 90 days? I was wondering.
We followed sort of another community that had this in place, I don't know, 12 years ago,
Yeah.
10 years ago. So it really we haven't made many modifications to it
Yeah.
through the years.
Maybe we should consider moving it to 30 days instead of 90. I mean, a month is,
Well, we were talking about inspections, and I know I got water service tight just a couple of years ago, and I got it because there was a fountain springing from my next door neighbor's lawn, and sure enough, we all ran out and, got it, which probably happens a lot. But I'm sitting on a, 45-year-old service, and nobody came out to inspect mine or anything else, so, I guess what I'm leading up to is, even though, we make abatements, we make exceptions for other things, and it just seems to me in this case that the customer is being so forward and honest and open about what they're trying to do,
I have no problem making, the request, the request. I'm just moving forward for everyone.
Okay, I
Maybe
see.
should we move from 90 days to 30 days? I mean,
Well, the thing of it is that, if the property were transferring to a new owner, forget it, right? Regardless if it's there, new rules, follow the rules.
yeah,
In this case, it's still in the family,
yeah.
and like it says, they've already been paying the bills, so I just want, he's gone, now
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm
the family
fine
wants
with
to
that.
make that adjustment. And I could do that,
Yeah,
as long as we're not upsetting the apple cart as far as any, you're staying right in the family. And, if they sell the property,
right,
start from zero,
okay.
I can definitely do it.
Judith, do you have anything you want to add?
no,
Okay, so the request is to waive the 90-day waiting period and continue coverage. Is there a motion? Or I'll make the motion.
1 second.
Any further discussion?
And we're gonna continue to accept their money in the meantime with
Absolutely.
the
We love
office too.
Send it. So the motion is to waive the 90-day waiting period, to continue the watertight protection plan with the $17 for this quarter. That is the motion. I believe you seconded it, Noreen? Did you second it? Had discussion. I'll take a roll call vote. Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Ms. Donahue?
Aye.
Mr. Goff?
Aye.
Ms. Wonderwood?
I,
And I for myself. Thank you. Superintendent procurement thresholds.
all right, so kind of building on that waterworks supply bid we were just discussing. With the, I don't want to say change in procurement, but the change in supply chain and dynamic of purchasing supplies and services, I wanted to see if the board would be willing to establish a procurement threshold up to an amount that I would be able to sign contracts on behalf of the board for things like well four cleaning and redevelopment, for items that are funded from within our operating budget, regular, I guess what I would consider regular business items. Things that I wouldn't include in that umbrella, for example, if we look back to the Pleasant Lake storage tank project, we had bid waterworks supplies so that our department could do that work in-house. That was kind of a special project that we were funding from within our budget. It required a transfer of money between line items within our operating budget. You know, instances like that, I would still look to bring those back to the board for the whole process. But for something like well 7, for example, I have that bid out on the street. They're due back this Friday. That I anticipate is going to be under 50,000. If so, you know, that would be an instance that I would like to, if possible, be able to sign to kind of keep the ball moving.
What's the, on average, amount, is it 50,000?
So 30B, so there's multiple procurement laws, right? So 30B is the general procurement of supplies and services. The procurement threshold up to 50,000 is a request for 3 quotes, like we did with the waterworks bid. Over 50,000, we have to do sealed bids advertised in the goods and services bulletin, on combis through the state. So those ones are over 50,000.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I think Dan has proven his trustworthiness and
Right.
his commitment to the department and his transparency for the last several years. So I'm quite comfortable in giving him the leeway to sign contracts in the amount of no more than 50,000.
It's fine.
Is that, like I said, is that what, I don't know, the DPW does, or how does that?
DPW all runs through administration.
Okay.
With the exception of the water department and the Brooks Free Library, as I understand it, all procurement runs through the town administrator's
Okay.
office. Town administrator has a procurement threshold up to 75,000 for contracts and services.
Noreen?
Well, I would just, for clarification, so from now on, if we were approving, actually, we wouldn't be approving a contract, but I know normally they say language like, approve the contract and authorize the superintendent to sign, but we wouldn't need to approve it in that way.
Right. This would
Okay.
be establishing that I may sign on behalf of the department, the
Right.
town, up to
Okay.
50,000. For procurements that do occur, those can certainly be included in, maybe a procurement section on the agenda or
Right.
within the superintendent's report, just to keep you abreast of, ongoing procurements and things of that nature. So it wouldn't be behind closed doors, but.
And my second question would be, the town's level for their equivalent of superintendent is 75,000, so I don't know why we would want a lower amount. I do understand there's a different procurement process, but I don't see that,
At this point, this is something that normally does not happen.
right,
75,000 goes to the town administrator. So, at this point, at 50, I'm comfortable,
okay,
and let it go.
all right,
All right, because in most cases, and over the years, most of those types of things are everyday going on,
makes sense.
And if it's a contract, or if it's something that entails more, or is questionable, you can come here, we'll talk about it, look it over. But,
Point taken.
yeah.
Plus, it's kind of new, so,
Well, no, and that's a good point,
Yeah.
and I intend to use degree of discretion, you know, if it's a contract for tank inspections, which I'll bring up to speed on later, but, you know, for a few $1,000, that is an annual requirement of DEP that we have a sanitary, you know, inspection, that's something
It's routine.
routine. If it's, you know, even if it's under 50,000 and it's not routine, I would like, I will bring it back, because just in the effort of transparency and keeping everyone in the loop.
Sure.
Okay,
And this isn't something I would turn over to, if for some reason Dan leaves tomorrow, the next superintendent coming in wouldn't have the
Right.
same authority. As far as I'm concerned, it would have to be a whole new process.
Very basis.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Privilege.
Right. So, a motion to give the superintendent the authority to, for the procurement of up to $50,000.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second?
second.
Any further discussion? I think the only thing I will add is that this is, you know, $50,000 for Superintendent Pelletier and Superintendent Pelletier alone. And if at one point that seat becomes vacated, it goes back to the board's authority.
Yep.
That's my amendment to the motion. Is there a second?
Second?
All right, I'll take a roll call vote. Mr. Thompson?
All right.
Mrs. Donahue?
Aye.
Mr. Goff?
Aye.
Mr. Underwood?
Aye.
And aye. Thank you.
So you would need our signature for that 40 grand? Yeah, so-
Technically,
Right.
at this point. But we've already made that motion.
Right.
All right.
I would have no problem.
Is that the norm? Is that like?
For that one, yeah, that would be, we need waterworks materials,
right,
you know,
okay, yeah.
under 50,000.
And it went without saying, but obviously, anything you're signing under $50,000, regardless if it's the norm or not, I know you're gonna bring it before us, and just to keep us advised of what's going on.
Right.
So there's plenty of transparency, and everyone's, you know, checking everyone, so.
Yeah.
All right, Route 39 Verizon Wireless lease.
All right, so Verizon Wireless, I may have mentioned this at a previous meeting, I can't recall. So I think this goes back to June or July. Verizon had reached out seeking to amend the terms of our existing lease agreement for their cell equipment on the Route 39 tank. What they were asking for was a rent reduction and an extension of the lease terms. Now, while that's a great request, we're very limited in what we can do within the confines of the mass procurement laws. So with contracts like this and leases like this, we can't legally make substantial modifications to a lease document than what was advertised in the initial RFP. The reason for that is, if we were going to just approve a rent reduction, that may have made other bidders want to bid on the RFP when it was issued. So it's considered unfair to amend the lease in the way that they're requesting. So in addition to that, the town meeting authorization that was granted for the lease of the cell towers, or the tanks for cell carriers, was for a 20-year lease. In order to extend it beyond that initial 20-year term, we also need to request an additional authorization from town meeting voters. So I have articulated this all to 2 or 3 representatives from Verizon. Their position is, we're paying more for rent on your tank than we are anywhere else. So if we are not able to reduce the rent and extend the terms, they're going to have to relay this site up the chain to see if they want to maintain equipment on our tank. So what I had said to them was, while we're limited in what we can do within the existing lease, we do like you as a tenant, and we would like to continue having you on the tank as a tenant. I've spoke with legal counsel just as to the process. What they recommended, if absent us bending to their terms, they've basically said we're going to walk away from the lease. What legal recommended was we do a voluntary termination, carry the lease through June 30th of this year, and then we would have to issue a new RFP prior to town meeting in the spring also request town meeting authorization for a new lease term. And if Verizon Wireless is the most advantageous bidder when we issue the new RFP, then they could remain on the tank.
Sounds good.
That said, there's a couple things that I would like to see amended in the lease agreement as well for the town's behalf. Whenever one of the cell carriers makes upgrades, swaps out their antennas, there's a whole process that we go through. Their engineers submit design drawings to us. We have them peer reviewed by one of our subcontractors. There's typically a degree of construction oversight where we have a town representative make sure that they're appropriately painting the rails so that they're not scraping paint off, rusting, causing degradation, things like that. Where a 39 tank is likely the next one to be replaced, ideally within the next 10 years, we're going to need to include some language about removing their antenna equipment from our tank for demolition, putting it on the new tank without cost to the town. I would also like, right now the lease is structured so that town of Harwich incurs costs for reviewing the construction documents that they provide to the town. So while we may get X amount of thousand a year in rent, if they do a construction project, we may lose $5,000 to $6,000 in revenue because of our costs relative to overseeing their work. In my opinion, if they're doing work on the project, on the tank, we shouldn't have to pay for that. So that our evaluation costs would also be borne on Verizon. So those are kind of the two big items that I would like to include in if we do a new RFP. There isn't necessarily action required of the board today, but just kind of an update as to this is the current situation. And if I haven't heard anything back from Verizon yet.
So it's been expressed to Verizon that we're not looking to lose them as a tenant, but legally, there's nothing we can do at this
Right.
point, and these are the actions we need to take to make this move forward.
Right.
So I mean, I hope they understand that, but I mean,
Right. And then basically, can issue a new RFP, and they can submit a bid with the terms that they're asking us to do right now.
right.
But if another carrier has a higher rent and an increased, percent escalator,
Right.
then they don't get it.
Okay. Doreen?
When does this lease expire?
We have another 10 years, I believe, on it.
Something like that.
I'm just, a little bothered by their approach, Gigantic organization, I mean, I would like to have seen them written that information in, or, refer to a lease number, or, something more. This is just a very friendly note about a lot of money, And I guess I'm also bothered because, I'd like to, redo my mortgage, and, there's a lot of things I'd like to redo in life halfway through the thing. So to be so powerful, to be able to say, well, we'll just walk away and, leave our lease. We made a deal with you, and we're just gonna say, well, no, we don't want any more. But that's how it is when you deal with these companies. So, I'm not feeling warm and fuzzy towards Verizon after reading this, but as Gary said, kind of is what it is.
And I agree 100%. And I had that discussion with him, I said, look, and if it was me in my private life, I might try to call their bluff.
Right.
Being more risk averse in my position with the town, but as I said to them, where are you going to find another site on Cape Cod? I mean, that is that elevated. They're just not. They claim that there was some carrier company that just got bought, that there's thousands of cell sites, but based on my experience dealing and talking with the cell carriers over the last 8 years here, we've been approached a number of times because they don't have anywhere else. So,
What is our get out of the lease clause?
I'll have to go back, I don't have
All
the,
right.
but
Yeah.
it is pretty easy to get out
Okay.
on both.
All right.
They can pretty much write a letter saying that they'd like to terminate their lease, and then
Yeah.
they have, they pay out the year,
Right.
and then
Okay.
remove their equipment.
Yeah, well, sounds like the fellow down there in Jersey thinks we're desperate for the money.
Right, big shot.
Is
All right.
somebody else just waiting?
So I relayed all that, the legal stuff to them. I requested that, because the last person I spoke with, the third and most recent person, wasn't able to, speak one way or another. It's above his pay grade. I sent him a whole narrative about it, asked him to run it up the food chain. If anyone needs to reach out, please call, because, it's not that we don't want you to be our tenant, there's just limitations as to what we can do. Right. So.
Sounds good.
All right. All right, Mass DEP sanitary survey.
So this, just a quick update, I did get a contact from DEP, reached out, I believe it was last week or the week before. They're coming down to do their tri-annual sanitary survey on November 1st, so they're coming out next Tuesday. This is a once every three-year inspection. A representative from DEP goes through pretty much our entire water system, every pump station, treatment building, treatment plant. So,
Is this the inspection where they come here first and set the bar?
yes. Actually, we're last, so.
Really?
He said that was our last one, so. It's a new guy this year, so,
Well, he'll learn.
So that should be interesting.
yeah. Usually takes the majority of the day to get through, so.
All right, thanks, Dan. All right, Water Management Act Regulations Amendment.
So this is the amendments I've been talking about for the last
10 years?
10 years, yeah. So this is in reference to DEP's desire to regulate registered drinking water wells, to impose drought response actions, irrigation, water bans, things of that nature. They're opening the comment period up now. And this is, as they say, they're looking to unify and kind of standardize drought response in the event that drought is declared. What I would say is the opinion of the general water suppliers, right, public water suppliers in the state of Massachusetts in response to these proposed amendments are opposed to them. For a number of different reasons. The biggest one is that water suppliers argue that we know our systems better than DEP does. And where DEP does come through with broad brushstrokes, that may not always put us in the best position. So if we think back to 2016, we had a drought declaration for the Cape Cod region. We were fine. Harwich was fine. It was Falmouth and Upper Cape that was in severe drought. With what they're proposing, they declare a drought, it requires all of us to respond in unison. What we would say as water suppliers is, well, it's unfortunate they have an issue up in Falmouth. We do not have the same issue here in Harwich, therefore we would like to still allow non-essential outdoor water use for the reasons that we don't want to impact revenue when there isn't necessarily a physical need to. That said, the other side of the coin is, as we all would argue from this past summer, it would be much easier to manage if it was kind of dictated at the state level.
Well, it kind of touches base with what Judith was saying earlier about DEP. Even though DEP may not be issuing a water drought, if we see something like that happening, we can still call for a ban on watering,
Right.
even without, because even during this last drought, DEP put in recommendations, but it was a recommendation, and asking you to follow those recommendations, where the towns were the ones to implement, the rules. So it kind of sounds like it's the
Well,
same
this
thing.
year, we were ahead of DEP.
That's what I'm saying. Right, yeah.
And we can still be ahead of them. This wouldn't prohibit us from taking our own actions.
Okay.
One thing that you think about, Chatham has shallower wells than Harwich does, right?
Yeah.
They may need to impose water restrictions sooner than we would, just due to the structure of their system.
Are you trying to say something?
Yeah.
Noreen,
Thanks, Karen. I would actually.
like I was never gonna ask you if you had a question, so come on.
So, understanding that managers are in general against this, but would this mean, for instance, the situation we had last summer where Orleans and Chatham and Dennis and part of Yarmouth had different, would this put us all in one pool now, the 6 in the same lens?
I believe it would, yes.
Would this put us in the same pool as the whole state?
No.
Okay.
Still
Well,
regional.
The proposed regulations would be effective statewide, but the drought declarations are regional, right? So
Okay.
we wouldn't, it's gonna be we're gonna be tied to precipitation as well as the groundwater monitoring well in Brewster that I get those water level charts.
Yeah.
So what they're proposing is when we meet X precipitation or lack thereof and water level at Y, it automatically imposes
Right.
water restrictions.
Another question, Noreen?
Yes, thank you. So they use the word restrict, pretty broad word, saying that include a new condition on registrations that would restrict non-essential outdoor water use, but does restrict mean just cut it down to 3 days? Does restrict mean, it
So
seems
that's-
so broad,
That's going to be identified in the individual permit or, town by town. So, where was I going with that?
restrict one.
So, I've just completely lost my train of thought. So your question again.
So it uses the word restrict, and, would that mean that Chatham would say, well, 4 days a week,
So,
and we say,
Orleans is mandated when those drought triggers are met, Orleans needs to do 2-day-a-week watering. That's what's stipulated in their permit. So what they're trying to do is adopt the regulation that allows them to restrict within the permit. So this is kind of step one. Once they adopt these, then they're going to start issuing permits out again. So they're going to say, Harwich, when you have this precipitation, this water level, 2 days a week. That's it.
Okay,
You're stuck with 2 days a week.
yeah.
If,
And then when you say they're gonna say this, you mean the DEP?
yeah,
Okay.
they'll state the restriction within our permit. So they'll say, here are the triggers for drought. When these triggers are met, this is what Harwich must do in response.
The least Harwich must do.
Yeah, right. We could, absent those triggers, still impose restrictions different from, say, the DEP says 2 days a week. Absent those, we could say odd even, 3 days, whatever we want,
Or even-
until,
Even not absent those, we can go deeper.
Right.
We could say,
Full
if they
blown.
say 2 days a week, we can go deeper, not less.
Right.
I mean, all in all, I think we did a pretty good job
I think so.
in managing where we were.
And I think we'll do better next year, because we're looking forward that it's gonna be coming.
I mean, anytime we do these things, it's a lesson learned for us too.
Right.
And to see the degree of how far the drought went. Just like the wooden soldiers falling down, type of thing. Each town,
And this doesn't include private wells.
no. It's golf course, cranberry growers, I believe, are exempt. It's just registered wells. And that's, so there's permitted wells and there's registered wells. 10 of our 14 are registered. So for water systems that are completely permitted, this doesn't affect them at all. Because we're registered, that gives us the right basically to say, sorry DP, we're not listening to you. We're registered for this amount and we're pumping this amount.
Right. So each town or each water registered user gets a different water management
Act permit.
act permit. Okay.
So yeah, each municipality gets its own Water Management Act permit. the permit for permitted wells dictates what, drought response. For registered wells, it's not applicable because they're registered, and the Supreme Court stated that DEP cannot impose on registered wells.
I hate to say it, but after reading this, it's almost like it doesn't do a great deal, in a way, other than maybe put more restrictions, as you say, your own system better, but there are so many ways, and I realize it will change, it's in the comment period, but there's so many ways to circumvent it, it's almost like...
Why do we have the difference in permitted wells and registered wells?
So
The
well registered,
benefit to us is have a registered well.
the benefit's to be registered, and up until, this is their method of trying to combat
Control.
the well registration, yeah. You say which one's better, or?
The difference. Of what,
Oh, the difference.
I mean, obviously, well, registered's better because
Right.
we have our permitting, and that's what we can pump. Then they can't come in and say, okay, change the plan. Like, you guys had 40 years to do this plan, now we'll give you 20 years.
Right.
Okay, you guys could pump 16 million gallons, now you can only do 10 million gallons. I mean,
That's what
that's
they're,
significant.
yeah, that's what they're trying to do, essentially.
Right.
Registered wells, I think most people would argue are better, give more discretion to the water system. Well registration happened, I don't know if it was the 90s, long before my time, and it was,
Watch it.
you had to register your wells that were in existence up till this date. After that, they're all going to be permitted. So we're grandfathered with the registered wells we have.
Right.
It gives us the ability to kind of stick our chin up in the air and walk away from DEP's ask on, resource management, if
Right.
you will, which it isn't the intent, and I don't think it has been the intent. I think the Water Commission has, always,
Yep.
as we saw this past, summer, acted in the best interest of the water system. And this is just that disagreement. DEP thinks that they can do it better.
Well, that just gives us that authority to manage our system.
Right.
Like, again, who knows it better than we do? And we're not all in the same basket. And, it should be a little bit more pinpointed as to who's doing what.
I have a red line copy of the proposed amendments. I didn't want to print because it's like 40-something pages. I didn't want to print 1,000 pages for the meeting. I'll circulate the full copy of the red lines, and then maybe for next packet, I can just extract the proposed changes.
All right, can you email those to us? Or-
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be easier.
Uh,
Gary, what was the second terminology? There's the registered wells, which we are,
Permitted.
and permits, so I want to make sure.
Anything else on that, Dan?
Yep.
All right.
What's the criteria on when they register, a permanent well? What are they looking for?
So,
Excuse me.
we're just starting this process now for North Harwich, the well that we're doing up there. So for permitting, we do the initial well exploration, which we did. Now we're going to go back and install an 8-inch well casing, and we have to do an official request for site exam with DEP, where we do a prolonged pump test. We pump it for 24 hours a day for a week straight under observation, and they check the drawdown of the water level, and they determine what the safe yield, gallons per minute, that well can pump without, sucking the aquifer dry, essentially. So all that information, we can't register wells anymore. There's no ability to, because that program stopped. But now that permitting process is all, so when we do this new well at North Harwich, this will be a permitted well. The flow, the max daily allowable, the average daily, all of those conditions
Gives them
get,
more control over the well.
it gives them, exactly, it gives them more control.
Yeah, okay, now I
Which is normal.
yeah.
So, moving on to the monthly pumpage. For 21, we had almost 94.5 million gallons for the month of September.
Mhm.
And then this year, we had 63.8 million. That's 31 million gallons less, which must have added to the aquifer. I must have helped.
I will tell you, from all the rain we got, I mean, that trend line comes down. That October 14th, we saw a little blip,
Yeah.
and that blip is now leveled back out to where it
I
was
saw it
before all that
yesterday.
rain.
Couldn't believe it.
Incredible, it's come down.
Yeah.
I know, Noreen?
I just had one thought, and I know this would be a guesstimate with the tiers, but for instance, for this 30 million gallons less, we know that last year, I don't remember exactly which month it fell in, but it was also a hot, dry year. I was wondering if you would consider making a guesstimate at quantifying that, because we don't need it right now, but a year and a half from now, we might want to remind people, well, we did lose $400,000 worth of revenue or something, so that might be a good figure to have to fall back on in the future.
I think people can relate to dollars more than they can do to gallons.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know it's a guesstimate because of tiers and all that stuff, but it'd be a nice, easy thing to say if people ever say, you know, our water rates went up or whatever, and we say, well, you know, remember, we did lose $500,000, you know.
Yeah, I'm wondering, yeah, the tiers is, and I can certainly do an initial based on everything I put together for the rate study that we did. I
Right,
have a pretty
right.
granular
That's right.
day by
That
day.
we have in it.
What I don't know how it will translate is, to project revenues, we've used a history of consumption by tier to establish how much water would be billed at a specific tier.
Right.
So I'll have to figure out,
You know what I'm wondering though? If we just pick a month within the last year, that has similar usage and know that we're under by the,
I can take,
rate increases.
I know what I can do. We
Okay.
just did the September bill run. I can take that summer quarter, look at what percentage was in the
Yeah.
tiers as compared to lefty. So,
I think it'd be a good number to have to
Yeah.
tell people, because it's simple, and they say, well, what happened with the... I was talking to a neighbor the other day, and she asked an agriculture place we were at if they spent more on water. So, you know, people get confused, and I was like, we don't charge more because you use less, but it's just simple to be able to tell people. And even when we were at capital outlay, you know, they didn't completely understand how far in advance we look.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's an easy number, that's what I think anyway.
yeah. Well, that was the campaign, I think around 2010, when they were going to renew the Water Management Act permits before, that was the campaign. Do you want to pay more for less? Because if we start pumping less due to increased restrictions, we're going to reduce revenue. Our expenses, it's not a linear decrease in expenses.
Right.
So we're going to have to raise rates to accommodate for
Yeah.
less pumping.
Right.
So that was the big PR campaign last time the state tried to do this.
Okay.
So,
All right, superintendent's report.
all right, a few items, just updates and bullets here. I did meet with the Real Estate and Open Space Committee last Friday before capital outlay, just to try to identify some other owners unknown parcels that we can start to pursue like we did out back here. I did confirm with the county the DRI mitigation funds that we used for the 5 parcels that we just recently took. We still have about $82,000 remaining in that available to Harwich, so we could conceivably go through the same exercise and acquire additional land, hopefully at no cost to us. So early stages of that. But
I'm sure you looked, but those parcels that were just auctioned, I assume were
Yeah,
no
no.
value to us.
there's nothing contiguous,
Right.
at least that I'm aware of. I had submitted 3 grant applications to the county for ARPA funds. They had a small and medium project grant portal that closed September 30th. I did a grant application for new leak detection equipment that we would propose to share with Brewster and Orleans. That was, I think, $150,000 or $175,000. I did another one for water system interconnections. The hope is that we can standardize an interconnection design between, you know, town of Harwich and Dennis, Harwich and Chatham, Harwich and Brewster, and then we can implement and construct that such that we would have a standard interconnection at all the different towns. Included there also was the purchase of a tow-behind pump, so that if one water system needed to pump water into the other one, the configuration would be there, the pump would be available to us all. And then the third one that I submitted was for $425,000 for the new source exploration. We have an article in for town meeting for $600,000. I'm looking to see if we can reduce that by $425,000 in ARPA funds. So we'll see if we get awarded any of them. But those went in into last month. We have Mass Department of Agricultural Resources had reached out, I don't know, a while back, seeing if water systems would be open to voluntary glyphosate testing. I did respond now after many scheduling and delays. They have finally reached out again. They're going to be coming out, it's on Tuesday next week, just as an introduction, take them around to the stations, and then we'll be conducting voluntary glyphosate monitoring on the state's dime for that project.
How far do they have to be away from the wells?
So they cannot apply herbicide within 400 feet, the zone 1 of a well, which is the...
That's it, huh?
That's the immediate zone of contribution. And then over in East Harwich,
Yeah.
that's where that food forest initiative garden starts at that 400-foot buffer and pushes outward. So that's on there, and hopefully if...
Noreen.
So I'm just curious, what would happen if they found, when they sampled, they found a tremendous amount of glyphosate or intensity of it?
What would they, so, good question. I don't know what and I'll ask him, when he comes down. So, I do know that the process for which regulations, drinking water standards are promulgated is all done through the EPA's Unregulated Contaminant Monitoring Rule, or UCMR. We're gearing up to do another phase of UCMR, I think next calendar year. That's where we did the first round for PFAS testing. We did do some herbicide and pesticides in the last round. Those are typically, they do kind of a mass sampling across the country based on detection limits and potential health hazards. They usually do supplemental, then have a scientific review, and then start to establish, regulations and policies. I don't know where this fits into that process, so I'll have to ask that question.
Thank you.
That's a good thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if it's there, we want to know.
Yeah.
This is my philosophy.
Where you gonna put your PFAS, though? That's the problem.
When you think about the amount of stuff that's going on around every year.
Oh, Maine, you can't even buy land. It has to be tested first.
Wow.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Moving on, I mentioned earlier, the bids for well 7 are out. They should be due back this week, so hopefully we'll be getting in the queue for that. Phase 3 wastewater soil borings, the contractor Desmond Well Drilling is looking to start Monday the 31st.
Did you say Desmond?
Yeah.
Did they do the last ones?
No. New England Boring Company out of New Hampshire did the last ones. So hopefully we'll have more accurate boring logs this time.
Hopefully.
So they're expecting, it's going to take through the winter, likely into spring. I just sent off maps and a list of streets to Channel 18 to get up on the town's website, as well as to administration, so if anyone calls, it says...
I missed what they're going to be,
The soil borings, this is a drill rig that comes out, and they have to, as part of SRF projects, what they're doing is basically classifying all the soils in the roadways where the sewers are going to go. And what they're looking for is depth of groundwater, if there's weak soils that may need to be supplemented or over-excavated because they can't support the weight of a manhole or a structure. Those are all the things that we're looking for through this process.
Okay.
Vehicle.
yeah, okay.
Noreen, you have a question?
Yes, I do, Gary. Thank you.
Please.
Regarding the timeline, if the borings aren't estimated to be done until spring say, but there's the possibility of the town going for a vote in May. How, would that substantially affect the costing in any?
No, I don't anticipate, and so they said 12 to 16 weeks. I'm saying spring just as
Okay.
being cautious. I don't anticipate we're gonna find anything. The ground subsurface geology is pretty well understood, so.
In phase 2 and phase 3, I would hope wouldn't be
Yeah.
that much different. They're both in East Harwich, but.
Not a lot of fill land around here.
A couple other quick ones. The low-interest loans for the sewer services. I did catch up with Liz Harder, our Assembly of Delegates representative. She advised that the low-interest loan program should be up and running by the first of the year. So that is my latest and greatest on that.
Great.
Maybe 0%. There may be 2 or other interest rates depending on income thresholds, but that's still being figured out.
You know, well, there's still so many people in process with the pandemic delays and everything, but if that is up and running as of January 1st, that'll be great news to be able to tell whatever new people
Right.
might be considered for the next phase, that they would have that option. So that's great timing.
On wastewater, we are going to be participating in the new permitting software the town hall's rolling out. They purchased a program called OpenGov, so that's where the application, issuance of sewer construction permits, and certificate of compliance is all going to be done through that new online portal. So I think we're going to be going live with that in about within a month, I would say. Last 2 items, we have our annual master meter calibration for all of our water meters throughout, our big production meters. Second week in November. Also occurring in November is our annual tank inspections, including the adhesion testing for the Pleasant Lake tank, which will help us figure out if we're painting, overcoating, or sandblasting and recoating. So those are all I got.
All right, Commissioners report. Mr. Thompson.
I'm good.
Ms. Donahue.
I'm good.
Mr. Goff.
I'm good.
Ms. Underwood. Judith.
Oh, she had to jump off
Okay.
to take her mom to an appointment.
The other thing I want to say, Judith's not here, but we had our capital outlay joint meeting on Friday. I thought it went very well. The majority of the board was very supportive. It was a very productive, very appreciative of the work that, Dan and the staff are doing and the direction that we're going in and the hard work and dedication that they're putting into it. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. Next meeting. Would be, if we stay on track, would be November 9th. Day after Election Day. Does that work for everybody?
Fine by me.
That's good.
John, good?
All set.
All right, Dan, Tracy, could you let Judith know that November 9th, we'll stick with 11:30?
Do we want to tentatively schedule the one after that? Just so when I reach out to the town administrator and selecting liaison, I can offer him a couple dates.
Yep, that's fine. So after that would be, that's the week of Thanksgiving, the 23rd.
Yeah, can do that.
Do you want to go after?
Before or after? You want to do the 30th?
Sounds good.
Is that work for everybody?
Right.
Yep.
Well, the only thing I'm thinking is, it'll depend on you talking to them, but, come the very 1st of December, they're all gonna get into the budget. They wouldn't be as interested, but why not? Yeah, nothing wrong with the 30th. Talk myself
That's all
into
no
it.
reason.
Yeah.
So, at that point,
Right.
I'm sure there'll be a lot of talk about budgets before
You're right,
December.
and the wastewater thing's coming on, so to.
Get an idea where's coming out of, whose
Yep.
pocket.
Yeah.
All right,
So that's the 30th, at 11:30.
right?
30th and the 9th.
9th. Sorry.
Great,
All right, motion to adjourn.
so moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Just my little, thanks for going.
This is Stacy.
Yeah, I gave you.
Tracy.